Okay, recording time. Down, 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 down. Night Twiggler intro.
Night Twiggler.
Well, guys, I am so sorry. I was just talking with the Secretary of Tourism, and I couldn't get off that call.
That's okay. We were just on the line with the president, so it all worked out. Hey, everyone, and welcome to The Inside, a podcast where we get into the extraordinary minds and experiences of everyday people. I'm Jay, and with me, as always, is Adam. Hey, my man, what's happening, Adam? Adam, hey, dude, we're recording.
Hey, sorry, I'm here. Sorry, I'm late.
You're professional.
I was driving over the studio and got stuck behind a closed bridge because there was this bus full of kayakers trying to unload to get down to the water,
Ooh, the old kayak bottleneck log jam, huh?
Yeah, Mm-hmm.
That happens, though, around here a lot in the mountains, like down by the rivers.
Yeah, and it's just because there's this tiny little slipway for them to go in with this gravel pull-off that's not big enough for a vehicle, so they end up blocking the road. I'm sure if the DOT invested more money into it, the problem would go away, they'd have enough room, and more people would come just due to an increase in accessibility.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that spot you're talking about. And that's a good point because over the course of the pandemic, people have been getting outside a lot more and they've been recreating.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really great for people's physical health and mental health, and I hope it continues for forever, right? But it's really good. Also, something we're not hearing about is for local businesses, and even new ones are kind of sprouting up around all this increased recreation participation.
Yeah, it's a good point you made. It brings joy to so many people, and while a lot of state and local governments don't really see the benefit in this is beyond me. I mean, Jay, where we live, there's some of the best roads for biking I've ever seen, but how many of them have proper bike lanes on them?
Yeah, Adam, not many at all, not enough.
Exactly. And so for those of you that didn't read our 27-page document on our website before you got on here, what we're talking about here is outdoor economic development. And someone who knows a lot about this kind of stuff is Dr. Danny Twilley, who works as the Assistant Dean for West Virginia University at the Brad and Alice Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative. And best of all, he's our guest today. He not only works for the outdoor economy,
but he is the economy. Yeah.
But he's someone that's walked the walk. He's kayaked the kayak. He's biked the bike. He's hiked the hike.
Okay, all right, dude. We get it. He's done it all, right? He's got a lot of experience.
He is. And Jay, I heard him the other day on our rival podcast, NPR. If I'm even allowed to say that.
No, don't say that. Oh man. Well, let's just get started with this interview, and we'll show NPR how it's really done, man.
That sounds good to me. So let's hear a word from our fake commercial and then bring on Danny. Hey, Jay.
Hey, Adam.
Well, Jay, as you know, I am from the city.
Yes, I do. Concrete jungle.
Exactly, Jay, which means it's so hard to get out and recreate properly.
Adam, I have the perfect thing for you, man.
What is it?
It's Forest Plus.
Forest Plus? Jay, what is that?
Well, Adam, Forest Plus is a portable forest that arrives at your door. It even comes with wildlife inside.
Wow, Jay, that sounds like fun for the whole family.
It is, Adam, but don't take my word for it. Hear it from one of our valued customers.
Do not buy this product. I tried it out and my son got eaten by the bear that came inside the
box. Ma'am, are you still there?
Anyway, Adam, see what I mean? This is the real deal. You can't get that kind of in the old concrete jungle.
Wow, Jay, this sounds super awesome. For you all to get your Forest Plus kit, use the link on our Instagram with the promo code SENDHELP to get 20% of your forest order. Order your Forest Plus kit today.
Well, hey, Danny, welcome to the Inside Podcast, man. We're so glad you're here.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you all today.
Yeah. Tell us briefly what you do. Where do you work? What do you do?
Yeah, so I work for West Virginia University and the Brad and Elise Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative, and my official role is as an assistant dean. And specifically what that means is, I work really in the outdoor economy space as my profession.
Well,
awesome.
And Danny, you're someone on top of that fancy title you're someone who's had a lot of outdoor adventures that we'll get into as the podcast goes on. But what kind of drew your love of the outdoors as you grew up?
Yeah, I mean, I was a traditional athlete, like a lot of kids, right? Ball, stick sports, and that's how I was very energetic kid, and that's how I spent a lot of my time. And it was somewhere as I always would go outside. I mean, that's where I thrived. My teachers used to tell my parents if he spent as much energy in the classroom as he does on the playground, he'd be a straight A student. And from sports, I grew up near the water, specifically around the ocean, and I started bodyboarding and then surfing. It was an old track coach who introduced me to it, and I just fell in love with like the power of the outdoors and nature. And when I stopped playing traditional sports, traditional sports teaches you so much, particularly around, what does it mean to have positive, be positive self, challenge yourself. And I still thirsted for that, but I didn't want it in that competitive team sport atmosphere. So I just started, playing in the outdoors, and best decision I ever made.
And I also heard you're on the top of the assistant dean bocce ball club. So
yeah,
that's something.
Well, it's not a large club, but we are certainly proud.
But seriously though, like you've had the opportunity to go on some really crazy adventures that take a lot of time and prep. What are some of the most epic things you've done, and what tell us what that took to get that done?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to single it down to like a single epic one. I mean, they've all kind of stacked up with each other for different reasons, and so I was very fortunate. To whether it was through hiking the AT, mountain bike, or cycling across the country and down the West Coast, mountain biking the Great Divide. I think in some ways taking students to the Balkans was pretty epic because you're somewhat responsible for 15 other humans, and I don't consider myself that mature of an adult to be responsible for other people, in that regard. But I think they've all been epic in their own way. Some of them through the actual sheer nature of the challenge, the physical, the mental, or even the social. Right, meeting some of the best people in the world, and just seeing kindness. I mean, that's when someone says to me, "What's the thread of travel?" I said, "You just expose yourself to the goodness of the world."
I love that, because even you're right. Even if people aren't like doing the actual adventure, like they can play a role in that in some other way or some unexpected way.
Well, and Danny, there's people, even though you made it sound like the best thing ever, that don't really like to do that. So what got your sense of adventure lit and kept you on all those trips?
I don't know. I mean, I've always been a goal-oriented person, to a fault at times. And so I think that was it. Like I love the physical challenge of it. I appreciated the mental challenge of it. But it was really being able to see places that few people do in ways that few people do. And, it's always, even though I feel very blessed for the amount of travel I've been able to do, it pales in comparison to some others, and that the world's a big, big place. And, I always, would tell my students is that, education has transformed my life, but travel gave meaning to it all because it made you appreciate what you have.
That's interesting because where Adam and I are, the Blue Ridge Parkway is right here, and I'm sure you've spent time on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and there's a lot of places to pull over and enjoy the scenery, but many people pull up and actually don't even get out of their car to take a photograph and leave. And the Mountain to Sea Trail is like actually running parallel to the Blue Ridge Parkway part of the way. There's like so many places that you could really experience some adventure. And it's just interesting to see where people's minds are with that.
Well, Jay, it's interesting too, is, I remember like one of my first trips. I mean, I went on a weekend backpacking trip, right? Like those were micro adventures when I look back on it. But for us, they were like amazing. Like, and then you do some backpacking trips, and then you're like, oh, well, let me do a week-long backpacking trip. Let me go on a 2-week-long, surf trip. Oh, let me see if I can actually through hike the AT. And so you keep on, and every time you accomplish it and have a positive experience and you persevere, that really kind of kept that thirst going. And so, maybe today that person, that's all they're doing. They're pulling over on the Blue Ridge and they're taking a picture. Maybe the next stop or somewhere else, they actually get out and say, well, I'm going to go do a short hike.
Well, Danny, how'd you finance all these trips? I'm sure it can't be cheap, or like the ability to take time off work or stuff like that. So,
well, at first I didn't work a whole lot. So I think to me, I set like the trip out. I was like, this is the trip I want to do. Mm-hmm. And I created work or financing around that. And I would say, okay, this is how much I need. And so, I mean, in full reality is like, I made pizzas from the time I was like 14. And so I worked at a pizza shop in college. And so when I'd go back home, I could always work there and pick up shifts. But typically from basically November and December, I'm going to date myself here, but there was before the .com world, there was those kiosks in the middle of the mall that would like name on rice, or those like ridiculous airplanes, little remote controls. I sold candles, like jar candles. And then there was like novelty, these like ones that glue and would glow in the dark and all that. I would sell those, and I'd work from the time the mall opened till the time the mall closed, 7 days a week, right?
Wow.
Nonstop. And and they would put me up in a hotel. I lived like dirt cheap, and I would just save all of that cash that I would make, and I would use that. And I did this for like 6 years.
Wow.
And people were like, how do you mentally do that? Because everyone's like, oh, I want to do that. I want to get that much money. And I was like, first, if you're doing it for the money and you don't have a goal at the end of it, it's really hard. For me, I wasn't doing it for the money. I was like, if I suffer for these two and listen to all that Christmas music, let's just take that into account, all that Christmas music. If you can do that, then I knew that I would have enough to fund at least 6 to 8 months, if not longer, of adventure, right?
Yeah, no, I'm thinking about, first of all, like, what was the quality of the hotel they put you in? Like that.
Was it a hotel or a motel? That's the big.
Had to be pretty bad. And go ahead.
Jay, just remember, like, I was used to like sleeping on the ground, so like I had a bed and a shower with running water. I mean,
and like bugs in the bed.
Yeah.
Like the bugs weren't outside anymore; they're inside with you.
Yeah, they were in the bed with me.
I'm imagining Danny during like the Black Friday rush, just like throwing candles as fast as he can to all these people.
And you're easy to talk to, so I'm sure you sold a lot of great glow in the dark candles. But after you work those like super long days for like opening to closing in the mall, and like you took that money to go surfing and South America and all that, but I remember you saying like you almost didn't come back. So like what was that like, and why did you decide like, okay, I need to go back?
Yeah, so, I was very fortunate. One of my good friends from high school he was an epic traveler, and we went to Puerto Rico together in college. That was our first surf trip, and I knew I was going to hike the AT that year, and that was a big goal of mine that I had set. And, I'd started doing some of that planning. And he was like, well, hey, why don't you come with me to South America for a couple months before you go on that? And I was like, sure. Why?
I got plenty of candle money.
Exactly.
I got candle money, man. I've just been slinging candles. And so, I'm down there, and it was truly like, Puerto Rico was great. I'd been to Costa Rica for a couple of weeks with some buddies, but this was like my true like first dirt bagging like travel experience where I was living kind of on $6 to $10 a day. I mean,
bartering with candles for everything.
I wish I can't carry that much. I mean, literally, we'd have our surf bag with our surfboards and a backpack. That's all we had with us. And you just meet so many fascinating people from all over the world, and it's easy to get wrapped up into, and I felt like I was just hitting my stride and comfort, right, of like being there. And my buddy was going to continue on to Chile. Oh my gosh, I don't want to miss that. This is so much fun. And I was explaining this one night at dinner with a bunch of people, these from different parts of the world, and I remember the person saying to me that like, you have always wanted to hike the AT. You have had an amazing experience here. If you stay here and don't get to hike the AT, do you think you'll ever do it? And I think, and they were right. And it was a couple who made this comment, and we had a conversation about it. And I decided to come back. And I thank them every day for doing it, because it came back, and it was one of the best experiences of my life.
So as you were kind of talking about, I guess you came back, and then you did hike the entire Appalachian Trail, or AT, as us people are in the Appalachians like to call it. But I want to give the listeners an idea, maybe if they don't know, of how like hard this is. It's over 2,000 miles, and you can say exactly how many miles if you want. I think that's up to controversy depending on where you start and all that kind of stuff down in Georgia. But basically, Georgia to Maine usually takes 5 or 6 months. And you're exposed to all kinds of terrain and weather and people. And I've read that like 3 million people a year like tried to do it, but only like maybe a quarter of them finish. While you're out there, was there like any crazy stories from that? Or there's this thing called trail magic. Maybe you want to talk about that? Or like, I know you probably acquired a trail name, which
candle maker.
Candle man.
Candles didn't stick, Adam. You're right on that. There's so many wonderful stories out there, but I'll share with you, like I had a moment of vulnerability when I was out there, and I was you hear like these trail like ideas, and one of them was, you get to Virginia, it's flat. Well, it's really no part of the trail is flat. Some are flatter than others, but the Shenandoahs are relatively manageable from a topography standpoint. But you have still, I mean, Virginia's just over 500 miles. I mean, that's that's a quarter of the trail basically. And the southern part of that state is super rugged. And so, you go through this moment of like getting through Georgia, which is straight up, straight down. You get through North Carolina, and you're like Virginia. And, at least in my mind, I had this idea of like, I get some sense of relief, right? Like it's flat, right? I had the maps. I knew that was not necessarily true. But I kind of hung on to it, and so when I get into Virginia, and I was probably maybe a couple days to a week in, and I kind of the reality of the whole thing hit me. I was like, I just know what I had just walked, and I've been out for maybe a month, maybe just over a month, and I've got 5 more months, and I've got several 1,800 or so miles left. Like, what am I doing? I mean, it's literally like, it kind of hit me. It was really hot. The weather had turned, had a really rough day. So I kind of walked into town. There was these small convenience stores that you could find, and it was like a mile or two. And I walk in, and a lot of times you don't take these extra miles, right? You're like, I don't want to do that. But I was like, all I really want is some chocolate milk and donuts. Like,
Yeah.
gosh, that would just be amazing. And so I ended up like walking in, get to this convenience store, and I'm like, go get the milk, go get the donuts. I'm psyched. And I get up there, and she was like, we don't take credit cards. Like, we don't take credit cards. Like, and I am, I don't really have cash.
Start crying.
Yeah, like it was close to tears at this moment because all I wanted, this wasn't.
I walked 1,000 miles for these donuts.
Yeah, there's not like a ton of like cell phones. I mean, we didn't have really cell phones. It was just a different technology time. So I'm sitting out front. Payphones were still prevalent, so I call a few friends. And they're like, Twilley, like, suck it up, like, get out there and hike. And I was like, okay. And so I'm just sitting there on the curb, and these two guys pull up, and they're using the payphone. And this one guy like goes in the store, comes out, and was like, hey, sits down kind of near me. I was like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, I told him what I was doing, and he's like, hold on, you hiked from Georgia to here? I was like, yeah. And he was like, so why are you here though? Like at the convenience store, like the trail, like where's that? And I told him I wanted chocolate milk and donuts. And he was like, oh, how was it? And I was like, man, I didn't get it. He was like, anybody who's crazy enough to walk that far, I'm happy to buy him chocolate milk and donuts. So he goes to the store, buys it for me. He's drinking a beer because him and his buddy were in trouble with their girlfriends. Ooh. He was drinking a beer. Buddy was on the phone trying to like, regain the peace with their girlfriends, and I'm having chocolate milk and donuts. And I'll tell you, I like walked back to the trail just full of life and like happiness. And, that was like, if someone's to say like, that was the closest I ever came from thinking about, I didn't want to do this. And it was like, a few hours. Other than that, it was just like, it was hard. There was times where it rained for some part of the day for 3 weeks, and you were wet. Not everything was wet, and you just kind of bear through it. And you laugh, and you recognize the silliness of it all, and you just keep moving forward.
So it sounds like you were alone, right? Were you alone on the whole trail?
No, yeah. I started alone, but you meet people. You become, it's very friendly, and you connect with people. And I loved hiking by myself because if I met you and Jay on the trail, and we were like, hey, I want to go. My aunt has a house here, and do you want to go hang out for a day or two? Sure, right? I'd go to music festivals, and so like that. And so I had a lot of freedom. And I met some really great people, and one of those groups was a group I ended up biking across the country with, because we became friends.
There wasn't any point where you didn't feel safe or anything like that on the trail?
No, I felt more safe out there than I do, in the modern world.
And not just people, I meant like critters and stuff too. There's no like the flying laser snakes. They didn't get you?
No laser snakes, no ninja squirrels, nothing.
Okay.
Nothing.
So what's some of the biggest stuff like you missed out there that kind of like kept you going? Like I've heard stories about people who like got off after a couple of weeks and like, all I want is a hamburger. Like I just have to have a hamburger. Like was it like that, or like did you miss like cleaning the bathroom at home or?
Yeah, definitely cleaning the bathroom, considering I didn't have a home. The two things I actually really missed the most, and it sounds so ridiculous, I missed running water, like true, like from a faucet, because everything was centered around where you got water, like everything. And the other thing I really missed was a reclining chair. I don't own a recliner in my house now. My parents did at the time, but I missed a recliner.
Well, Danny, you mentioned earlier you biked across the country with some people that you met on the trail. Was that just how'd that come about?
Yeah.
Would you sit down one day and you're like, we're doing this?
No, well, you meet a few people like that are biking across country, or you kind of, I biked across country. So, it's just like another kind of epic kind of trip that people talk about. And we were somewhere in kind of just crossed New York. And we had like, I remember like there was this rock outcropping. We all kind of cooked dinner, and we were going to hike a little bit longer. And we were just kind of all there, like kind of just BSing. And someone was like, gosh, you know, it'd be really awesome would be to bike across country. And someone else was like, yeah, that'd be so much fun. You remember we still had a long way to go and we had just walked a long way. And you're kind of like, man, wouldn't it be cool to like actually do, I don't know, 70 miles, 100 miles in a day, on a bike versus, 20, 15 to 25. And so it just kind of started off as a joke. And everybody, several of us there were like, okay, yeah, let's do it. But let's not do it next summer. Let's do it the summer after. And it just kind of stuck. At that point, I had, lived out of the back of my truck after the AT and moved out to Oregon. I traveled the country. And then I ended up in Bend, Oregon for a few years, and I was planning to bike across country. That was kind of my thinking. So I was planning to do it with a couple of my friends out in Oregon, and they were kind of bailing on me on the idea, but I was still committed and I was still planning it. And I happened to reach out to one of the guys I just hadn't talked to in a while, and said, hey, what are you up to? And how's life been? Because we didn't have social media or anything like that. Couldn't text anyone. You had to like actually physically call them. So called them and they're like, yeah, we're still thinking about biking across country. I was like, that's crazy. Me too. And they're like, well, let's live up to the commitment. Let's do it together. And that's what we did. And I flew out east and met them down in North Carolina, and we drove up to Maine and put our rear tire in Bar Harbor and biked our way to Anacortes, Washington, and then a few of us made a left-hand turn and biked all the way to Mexico.
Dang. So is there something like from that biking trip that like sticks with you still today, like you'll never forget?
One of the things that we did was, in the middle of summer, it's super hot, but in middle America, they have these great pools in a lot of these small towns. And we're in a small town, Iowa. And we're in the middle of the day, we had stopped. There were great places to eat lunch. Oftentimes they'd let us swim for an hour or two for free, or we'd pay a few bucks. You could get a shower, swim, eat your lunch. And, we'd come up with all these bikes. And this lifeguard, we heard it all the time. People would be like, oh, what are you doing? And we'd tell them, like, oh, I'd love to do that. And we'd always be like, come on, join us. And no one ever took us up on it. And this lifeguard came up and asked us, and we said the same thing, oh, come and join us. And, didn't think much of it. We were like, hey, we're going to bike into town. Where's the grocery store and a bakery? I love bakeries. I stopped at a lot of bakeries on that trip. And she told us where they were. And then we're coming out of the grocery store, myself and one of the other guys. And she's like, are you all serious? Because I just called my mom and asked her if I could bike with you all. And
what?
She told me to ask her dad. And we're like, yeah, sure we are. Like, again, not thinking anything of it. She goes, well, where are you all camping tonight?
This is like a teenage girl?
Yes.
Wow.
She just graduated high school. She was going to be a freshman in college. Okay. And she, and I should preface this, at this point, we had picked up a couple of the guys were coaches. And so they picked up, we had picked up people along the way. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't, but this was like kind of an odd one here. And so we told her where we were camping. It was one of the guys' birthday. So we definitely had some beers. We camped about 20 miles from where they were at. And so she was like, oh, I'm going to ask my dad. And if I can do it, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay, cool. So we wake up, probably not our best selves. One of the guys had dreads, had a little bit longer hair, like kind of just a little bit hungover, of celebration. And swear to you, this car pulls up. And we did have and she has a bike on the back, comes out with a backpack, a sleeping bag, and a roll of duct tape. The mom never gets out of the car to feed us, like none of that. And she goes, what? I was like, what are you going to do with the sleeping bag and the duct tape? And she's like, oh, I'm going to duct tape my sleeping bag to the bike. And I was like, that's insane. So I ended up carrying the sleeping bag. She joined us The mom was like, we did have a cell phone, but it was like roaming. You charged you like whatever it was, like ridiculous amount per minute.
Yeah.
So we never used it. And we're like, okay. And she started biking with us that morning, and we didn't know for how long. They come to find out it was like 3 or 4 days. And it, of course, we just were like, whatever. Still kind of odd. Didn't think much of it. But, like we always swam at rivers. We jumped off a bridge that day into a river. We camped at a YMCA that night and swam and had like cannonball contest with all the kids and had a great dinner. And at the end of after dinner, she looks and she goes, "This is the best day of my life."
Man.
Wow.
Oh, boom, right?
Yeah.
Just like powerful. So she bikes with us to south of Minneapolis, St. Paul. A friend of hers picks her up. She goes home, and we're just, she knew where we were biking to and kind of our general schedule. And she was awesome. She was so much more mature than us. That's not a high bar to achieve. She was definitely.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. And so this girl, she goes home, and her dad says to her, she was just miserable. She had quit her summer job to do this as a pool, right? And her dad came home one day and was just like, "I've never seen you so unhappy. Come with me." He took her to the bike shop, got her outfitted with like panniers and like tent and stove and all that. Put her on a bus, sent her to Fargo, North Dakota. We got a message on the cell phone. She'd meet us in Fargo. We connected there. And she biked with us all the way through Glacier National Park.
Wow.
That's just a crazy, crazy story.
Isn't it wild?
I know.
Really.
Yeah.
So you heard it here first, people. Danny, Assistant Dean, says that biking across the country is way better than hiking the AT.
And he's pro bulldozing the West Coast.
Yes, apparently so.
I love the West Coast. I don't know. I love biking, but I don't know. There's something special about hiking. They're each your own. They're both wonderful. Do them both. Tell me what you think.
So like what unexpected kindnesses did you experience while biking or hiking in this like super amazing country of ours?
So, I didn't share it. The summer after I biked across the country, I did 70% of the Great Divide mountain bike route, which runs along from Canada to Mexico. This was before it extended into Canada. And it stays within 50 miles of that true, continental divide. And so, on that trip, there was tons of kindness, but my dessert speaks to me, and I love peanut butter. Like dessert and peanut butter, if you mix those, the world's just perfect in my mind. And it was just one of those cold rainy days out there. And I remember we pull into this like town, and it had like a diner, and I was like, ate a ton of food, and I was like, gosh, I just want a piece of that peanut butter pie. And the woman was just like, we don't have any more. And like she probably just like saw my face of devastation. So she ended up, I think, going out, and somehow we ended up with she found a peanut butter pie. And to me, that woman, I don't remember her name. I remember what the inside of the restaurant looked like, but it's as close to that moment was heavenly for me. But yeah, there's so many stories of kindness, and what I will say this, the people that I think appreciated the most were the older people. We always got comments from older people that was like, "You guys, I'm so happy. Do it while you're young." That sentiment, do it while you're young. In that lesson, I used to always tell my students, like, when you graduate, like, do something for yourself, like, if you can. So try it. And so for me, that idea of do it while you're young, the appreciation of the older people for what you were, for traveling and trying to live life to the fullest was really remarkable.
That's cool.
And we got to see where like all that young adventuring caught up with you, young man. So kind of shifting gears, you've ended up in one of the best outdoor spots in North America, West
Yeah.
Virginia, right?
Yep.
Where you're the assistant dean of the Smith Outdoor Economic Development Collaborative, or the OEDC, at West Virginia University. And one of the things you are working on, Danny, is the Ascend West Virginia plan. And it was even featured on NPR, All Things Considered, where they gave you a few minutes to talk, but we'll give you a couple more than that. Because you mentioned to us exclusively mentioned to us that you believe recreation is a right and not a privilege. And so could you kind of explain a little further what you meant by that?
Yeah, I'll talk about that. Is that, fundamentally what we're trying to do is provide access to the beauty of West Virginia. And when we provide beauty, and what that could be from a visitor, a permanent resident, it doesn't really matter to us. So what I mean by that is that I fundamentally believe that recreation can transform people and place. It's one of the few things that does, education being another one. And so, but oftentimes it's operationalized as a privilege, right? The expense of sport, the expense of some of these recreational pursuits. Not everyone will have the safety net and the love and support of family to be able to do these adventures. So how do you provide access out people's back doors? How do you give them, whether they can hike or bike or whatever that is? And so, to me, if we can have people connect to the beauty of this state, if we can have people connect to nature, it helps people understand the importance. And we're seeing that now. Let's just look at where people went in COVID. People were going outside and recreating.
Right.
People were going to public parks and, go try to buy a bike or a kayak. I mean, this is, and so how do we do that on a large scale for a state that needs it? I mean, that's what I think about. And so how does that fit in the West, the Ascend program is, Ascend is about attracting talent, but also retaining the talent that we currently have. When we look at places like Utah and Colorado, Western North Carolina, when you look at Northwest Arkansas, these states have, tremendous outdoor assets. I would say that West Virginia has comparable and competitive outdoor assets. And in some cases, I would say we have better in certain categories, but we all have something valuable, rare, and hard to imitate. So how do we leverage that for community and economic prosperity? And that's what I spend my time doing. And so for me, it's all about how do you attract and retain talented people. West Virginia has lost more population than any other state in the entire country. So how do we plug the bathtub, right? Keep our talent here, and then how do we fill it with new talent? It's the only way this is going to work. Again, we can look at the data, from Utah, Colorado, what you all have seen, in your part of the country. And that's why I fundamentally believe that outdoor recreation and quality of life that you can have here in West Virginia is competitive. We just have to leverage it to the level that you all have in those other states and areas around the country.
Right. Well, the most impressive part is this program you're involved in. It's fairly new. And within the first 6 months, you guys got a very generous $25 million grant. And so I'm guessing, like most things, a big financial donation can open up some possibilities. And so with what you just said about recreational prosperity, how are you trying to use these goals to make West Virginia prosper with that program?
Yeah. So, we are blessed to have Brad and Elise Smith. Brad's from Canova, West Virginia. Elise is from Ohio, but, has a foundational fundamental belief in West Virginia. They are visionaries. They are, we use data. I mean, we talked about what these other states have and what we have as West Virginia, and how do we ignite that to keep our best and brightest here and to attract new talent here? And how do we use that to, have this kind of flywheel effect? It might be one of the most impactful moments. I've seen this work throughout the country and throughout the world. I've traveled the world, I've traveled the country, I've taught it, I've studied it, I believe in it. And to be able to share that with two people who are so incredibly kind, talented, But I mean, they are, to have them believe in what your story is and your program to the point of where they're willing to give through their Wing to Wing Foundation, that type of financial support. I can't even wrap my head around it. I try to, I just try. And I think it's really important to understand that we're stewards of a gift. This gift wasn't given to me. It was given to West Virginia and West Virginians. WVU and myself and our team are just a part of a larger group trying to have this positive shift. And this is a very significant component, but it's part of a larger story. And so what, your last part of that question is, what has it allowed? It's given us the megaphone and the microphone for people to actually be like, oh my gosh, if Brad at least believe in this outdoor economy and this youth development, then we need to pay attention too. And and so for me, that might be the most powerful and long-lasting component of this, is that we have a chance to show what's possible in several communities and throughout the state. And in doing so, if we can create a rising tide of them, then we're going to have all these other communities going to be like, how do I do that? I want to do that. And so it's really given us this amazing microphone, amazing opportunity to tell a story of why West Virginia has every opportunity to have the issues that you all are seeing. I would love to have that problem. Like, give me that any day of the week. And so that's where I hope we're headed with this work.
And West Virginia has a lot more water than Colorado, so there's that.
Yeah, we do. Matter of fact, I'm going to brag on us. We have the highest density of whitewater than any other state in the country.
Well, I just meant drinkable water.
Yeah, Jay.
There's no water shortage right now in West Virginia.
Yeah, you got that right.
But there is really great whitewater. We're hearing a lot about infrastructure these days, especially in politics and stuff like that. But there's also like recreational infrastructure. And so how does that differ from what we typically view as infrastructure? And why should we even care about that?
Yeah, no, Jay, that's a great question. Here's the reality. It doesn't differ. It doesn't. It shouldn't. Right now, we're not there yet in the vernacular. Like, when people think infrastructure from the political standpoint, oftentimes they're thinking like roads, bridges, broadband. I will argue, and they do that because it's part of economic development. Outdoor recreation infrastructure is economic development, period. Exclamation point. No question.
Oh, really? Tell us more about that.
So I mean, let's take a look at when we think about economic impact, right, from from visitors, right? Northwest Arkansas, with their outdoor recreation, saw $27 million in out-of-state spending from out of state, right? Northwest Arkansas is not easy to get to. $27 million in a single year from out of state visitors. That's economic impact, right? Sure, they have invested a significant amount of money in their infrastructure, but I mean, it'd be like paying off your house in 3 years, or 4 years. I mean, I'll take that any day of the week. And so, if we continue to look at even what the Outdoor Industry Association, I mean, they're saying it's $887 billion in spending towards outdoor recreation. The Bureau of Economic Analysis, it's just over 2% of the total GDP for the United States as part of it. It's big business. It is economic impact. So for me, I can put people to work in West Virginia. I can get them healthier if they have access to this. I can help them mentally, right? If they can have access to outdoor recreation. And what we need to do is stop building these things away from communities and have these things accessible from our communities, right? And I say this all the time. If you go to almost any small town in the country and you go to a park, right? They're going to first have a park. They're going to have playground equipment. They're probably going to have a baseball field, tennis court, basketball field, and some type of or basketball court, and some type of soccer field, football field. Like, why? Because we teach that in K-12 education. We teach ball and stick sports. We have it in our communities. if we want outdoor recreation to be part of people's lifetime, and what we know is there's also a correlation between income and participation level in those sports. So how in the world can we, but when you look at the average age of mountain bikers, it's in the 40s, right? And so it can be a lifetime sport. So how do we sit there and create accessibility? Well, we have to start getting it into our K-12 systems. We also then have to start getting people access from their towns and from their communities. When we do that, then we will have it be part of our ethos and who we are.
Right.
That's
great. All of this is going to take change, right, Danny?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And something you have said is people want opportunity without change. And do you think that's basically the biggest challenge you're going to see in the next couple of decades with outdoor recreation?
No, I think it's kind of, I think it's a challenge. But oftentimes people, are sitting there saying, well, I don't want all those people here. We see that, in other countries, different parts, and so people want, opportunities to keep their kids and have prosperity, but they want certain things to stay the same, and that's okay. So, my always response is, what are those things that you don't want to change? And let's try to hold those dear. And then what parts of those are we willing to have change, but still hold the rest at true value or at our core value? And then everything else we're going to have to potentially talk about in order to create, that type of opportunity, right? I love that area because I have the trail all to myself. Well, that's a pretty privileged stance to take, especially when a state like West Virginia is at the bottom of all the right list. I mean, when you look at economic opportunity, health, quality of life, we're at the bottom of those. So we have to be willing to compromise on certain aspects in order for us to create those opportunities. I honestly think what we know is the biggest obstacle is funding. And I know it's somewhat cliche, but funding outdoor recreation infrastructure is really hard because we haven't made it synonymous with health. We haven't made it synonymous with economic development, and we're working on it. And I'm not saying we're not, but that's why it's so hard to do. And so I think that's going to be part of it. But I also think, we're going to be demanding it. The states that have leveraged this and have been successful, I think, they still will say they have challenged funding it because it's overused, right? It's overused. We need more development. And so for me, that's the biggest thing, is to helping our political leaders and our federal and state leaders see that it is economic and community development.
Well, Danny, lastly here on the inside, sometimes we like to keep it a little, keep you on your toes. So we got a surprise question for you.
Yeah.
We're going to ask you some this or that questions, and you got to answer as quickly as you can. Sound good?
We call it the speed round.
Yeah, the speed round.
All right, I'm in.
All righty. Focused up, ready to go?
Yeah, I'm in.
All righty. Go.
You ready? I'm not ready. Okay. The AT or bike tour?
AT.
All righty. Whitewater kayaking or climbing?
Whitewater kayaking.
Okay.
Beard or no beard?
Beard.
All righty. Backpacking or biking?
Biking.
Pizza or blades of grass?
Oh, pizza.
All righty.
With blades of grass on it.
Yeah. All right. Western North Carolina or West Virginia?
West Virginia.
Ooh.
Oh, man. All right. Well, that was the inside.
Yeah.
Ultimate Frisbee or disc golf?
Disc golf.
All right. Burrito or burger?
Burrito.
WVU or Ohio University?
Oh, man. I am not answering that one.
Come on, it's a speed round.
Come on, hurry up, Danny.
I can't do it. No. Like,
okay. We respect that.
Yeah. All right. And lastly, NPR or the inside? And remember, we're giving you more airtime than them.
The inside, baby. The inside.
Yeah, man.
Danny, thank you so much for coming on today, man.
It was
awesome.
It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot.
Yeah. Sorry I was late, guys.
No, you're good.
It happens. At least your earbuds work.
Yeah.
Dude, that was a great interview. I mean, talk about a powerhouse in the industry.
Yeah.
West Virginia is so lucky to have him collaborating with them.
Really, Adam. And, the thing I took away from that is West Virginia is not just country roads and mountain mamas anymore.
Well, Jay, as someone who works in the environmental field, for the longest time, people always associate the environment and the economy as some contradictory forces. And that really isn't the case at all. Like, a healthy ecosystem provides tremendous value to economic activity. And it's just really refreshing to see some others who are passionate about that. And I think as long as West Virginia University and the state have Danny around, they're in really good hands.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when we think of saving the environment, we should also be thinking about things that help people see it as something like they value in their day-to-day life, right? So not only for their health, but for also building local and national economies and things like that.
Exactly. All good points, man. But you think that about wraps it up for the show today?
Not really, Adam. I got 30 more minutes of content. So I also wanted to say.
And that was The Inside. Again, Danny's program at West Virginia University can be found on Facebook at WVU OEDC, or you can find them online at oedc.wvu.edu. Special thanks to our guest, Danny, and our producer, Dave. The show is written, recorded, edited, and co-produced by Jay and myself. Our title music, Crossroads, was written by Rock Sounds, and we'll have a link in the show description for that. Our title music was performed by Keith Richards. We'll have more episodes coming soon, so make sure to listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. As always, make sure to follow us on Instagram at The Inside Podcasters, or feel free to shoot us an email at theinsidepodcasters@gmail.com.
Dude, I wasn't kidding.
I was reading the show.
I had 30 more minutes.
Dude, it's been on here long enough. I just wanted to call it.
Come on, you always do that.
No, I'm in charge of the outro, okay?
Come on.
It's my call. No.
All right, I'm starting my own podcast.
Screw you. And someone who knows a lot about that kind of stuff is Dr. Danny Twilley.
Twilley. Twiddly, the Twiddler. Twiddly Rogers. What do the kids even call this these days, Adam?
An asshole?
Yeah.